In today's class, we are going to discuss cymose inflorescence. So now see, last class we have discussed about racemose inflorescence, right? So exact opposite to that would be cymose inflorescence. Whatever are the characteristics of racemose inflorescence, exact opposite if you say, that would become cymose inflorescence. So you don't have to again remember it, in a separate way. So that is the definition. See, cymose inflorescence is a definite inflorescence. Like racemose inflorescence was indefinite, this one is definite inflorescence. Alright. Now, here the tip of the main axis will terminate into flower and the rest of the growth will be continued by one or more lateral branches. So what would happen here is that at first, suppose this is the growing point or the main axis, and the growing tip will terminate, it will stop its growth and it will form a flower. As it forms a flower, the further growth is going to be stopped. Now, some lateral branch will arise to continue with the growth. To further make the inflorescence axis grow, a lateral branch will arise. And this branch will also then eventually terminate into a flower. Further, the growth will be brought about by another lateral branch. Understood? This is how the growth is going to occur. Fine. So that's what is meant by this, that the tip of the main axis will terminate into a flower and hence its growth will stop. So the rest of the growth will be continued by one or more lateral branches. Understood? Now, the arrangement of flower would be basipetal or centrifugal. Basipetal means older towards the apex and younger towards the base. Exact opposite of acropetal. Alright. And centrifugal. Centrifugal would mean the older flowers at the center and younger flowers at the periphery. Understood? So exact opposite of acropetal and centripetal, which was applicable to the racemose inflorescence. Alright. So now, types of cymose inflorescence. We have 4 types of cymose inflorescence, which are as follows. First, uniparous or monochasial cyme. Uni or mono means one. So here you can see this is the growing point which has bloomed into a flower. So this is the oldest flower. Okay. So oldest flower at the apex and younger as we move towards the base. That's what is basipetal arrangement. Alright. So this is the terminal flower. Now that it has ceased growth or it has stopped its growth, now a lateral branch will arise and it will start to make the main axis grow further. Right. But eventually even this one will terminate and bloom into a flower. When it stops its growth, again another single lateral branch is arising and this process is going to be repeated. Understood? So why we call it uni or monochasial? Because when the bud will culminate into a flower, it's a single lateral branch that will arise every time. Only a single lateral branch is arising. See, every time a single lateral branch is arising. That's why it is monochasial or uniparous cyme. Cyme means cymose. Alright. Next, biparous or dichasial cyme. Bi or di means 2. So here the growing point will culminate into a flower. Not one here, rather 2 lateral branches are arising and eventually they will also convert into flower. As they convert into flower, again 2 lateral branches are arising. Again they are culminating into a flower. So the process is going to repeat itself eventually as such. So because here 2 lateral branches are arising, we call it biparous or dichasial cyme. Example is jasmine or bougainvillea. Alright. Next, multiparous or polychasial cyme. So I think by now you all are clear what it means. So one lateral branch, mono, 2 lateral branches, so bi. So if more than 2 lateral branches will arise, of course we'll be calling it multiparous or poly. Poly also means many, right? Multiparous or polychasial cyme. So as you can see, this is the terminal flower and further the lateral branches that are arising are this 1, 2, 3 and 4. 4 lateral branches. So when they will also eventually, convert into flowers, from them 4 lateral branches are again arising. So this process is going to be repeated, and as here there are more than 2 lateral branches, we'll call it multiparous or polychagal cyme. Example is Calotropis. Alright. Last is cymose head. Cymose head is going to have inflorescence axis, which is a receptacle, means it is not going to develop, it will remain shortened or it will remain flattened. Okay. So here we see there are 2 types of flowers present. Inside these are the subsessile flowers and outer these are the sessile flowers. So subsessile and sessile flowers will remain arranged centrifugally around the receptacle. Okay, how do you define it? Subsessile and sessile flowers will remain arranged centrifugally, means older at the center and it is going to be younger at the periphery. Centrifugally around the receptacle. That's what is called cymose head. Example is Kadam or Acacia. Okay. So with that we reach the last part of inflorescence, that is spatialized inflorescence. Let's see what it is. So finally, spatialized inflorescence. Spatialized inflorescence means a unique form of inflorescence which would not fall under any category as such. It would neither be falling under racemose or cymose, or it would show certain unique features due to which they have been categorized separately and have been given the name spatialized. Alright. So we have mainly 3 types of spatialized inflorescence, which are as follows. First, Hypanthodium inflorescence. Hypanthodium inflorescence, as you can see in the diagram, it consists of a flask-shaped fleshy receptacle. So this whole thing that you can see, this is the receptacle, okay, fleshy flask-shaped receptacle. Now, at one end of the receptacle, there is a minute pore or opening, okay, which is lined up by certain scales and it opens into a large canal. This is the canal. Alright, canal in its inner lining possesses certain downwardly pointed or downwardly positioned hairs. These are hair-like structures which is lining the entire canal. Okay. Inside this finally remains the unisexual flowers in a cluster, and that is the main inflorescence. So these unisexual flowers are as such. The uppermost flowers are the male flowers, the lowermost flowers are the female flowers, and in between remains the neuter or sterile flowers. Okay. So this type of inflorescence is a characteristics of Moraceae family, and hence it is mainly found in ficus. That is banyan, peepal, gular, all of these plants would be possessing Hypanthodium inflorescence. Banyan, peepal, etc. Alright. Next, moving on to verticillester inflorescence. Verticillester inflorescence is a combination of 2 types of cyme or cymose. Okay. See, this is the node present in the main axis. Okay. Now, from this node arises this opposite leaves. Okay, 2 leaves are arising. So, from the single node 2 leaves arising means it is opposite phyllotaxy, right? So, this opposite leaves are arising, and from the axil arises 2 lateral branches, okay, which terminates into flowers. That means what? It is forming a dichasial cyme, isn't it? But if it is a dichasial cyme, next what should happen? From this lateral branches, another 2 branches should arise. That's how we can call it dichasial cyme, right? But then this dichasial cyme will possess monochasial or uniparous branches. So this will start as a dichasial cyme, but it will end up being a monochasial cyme. So it is a combination of dichasial and monochasial cyme. Understood? So that's why it has been categorized separately and given the spatialized inflorescence, that is verticillester. Example is Tulsi or Ocimum, another is Salvia. Okay. Finally, we move to the last one, that is Cythium. Cythium inflorescence means inflorescence which is marked by cup-shaped involucre. So here the inflorescence entirely will remain covered by a cup-shaped whole of bract that is going to be called as involucre, isn't it? So now from this involucre you can see these flattened edges, isn't it? These are the nectariferous glands. These are glands which will secrete nectar, that will produce nectar, alright. And from inside you can see these short filaments that are arising. These are actually the male flowers, and this large centrally located flower that is coming out, that is actually the female flower. Alright. Now if you open the bract, if you open it up and if you try to look inside, you will see that from the center arises a single female flower and it remains surrounded by numerous male flowers. Okay, so that's the characteristic of Cythium inflorescence. In Cythium inflorescence, there will be a cup-shaped involucre present, and it would possess a single centrally located female flower, a single female flower, which will remain surrounded from every direction by numerous male flowers. Alright. Example is poinsettia, scientific name being Euphorbia pulcherrima. Alright. So this being the entire discussion regarding inflorescence. Next we are going to start with flower. So as you all know, flower is a specialized reproductive shoot. Okay. So it is meant for reproduction, right? And it is borne by the angiosperms or commonly the flowering plants. Alright. Now regarding flower, we are mainly going to discuss about its parts. Okay, what are the different parts of the flower and what are their essential functions, all of that we'll be discussing. But before that, do remember one thing. See, flower is a reproductive shoot, right? So in that case, all throughout the life cycle of the plant, you won't be able to see flowers blooming in the body of the plant, right? So because plants in their life cycle consist of two stages. The first initial phase when the plant is growing, we call it the primary phase when the plant is merely growing vegetatively. Means its leaves, its stem, its roots, they are going to grow, and mostly the plant is going to grow as per the length. Alright, but later on, after the plant has reached a specific stage of growth, only then you will find that the plant would start bearing flowers. The flowers, when starts to be born, you can be sure that the plant now has entered the reproductive phase in its life cycle. Understood? So that's why we say that the flower is a specialized reproductive shoot which will allow the angiosperms to reproduce. Alright, so let's see the parts of the flower. So flower, this being a typical diagram of the flower, you can see that the flower consists of a stalk, okay, and the stalk of the flower is known as pedicel. Just like you have learned in the leaf that the stalk of the leaf is called petiole, in case of flower we call it the pedicel. Okay, yes, of course, not all flowers will bear pedicel. Sometimes a flower might not bear a pedicel. We then call it a sessile flower, which you have learned under inflorescence, isn't it? So, the pedicel would eventually end into a swollen point, and that is known as the thalamus or receptacle. Thalamus or receptacle is a modified condensed shoot. Okay, there in the thalamus, many nodes will be present, but then internodal growth is absent. Because internodal growth is absent, you know very well that all the nodes would remain condensed at a point. And from the nodes, what is supposed to arise? The leaves, right? So here in the flower also, from these nodes present in the thalamus, the leaves will arise. Fine. So all these floral parts that you are seeing, they are actually modified leaves, but they are specialized because they would be rather performing not photosynthesis but reproduction. They will help in the reproduction process. Hence they are modified leaves. Alright. So all floral parts are actually modified leaves. Understood? And they are going to arise from the thalamus. Fine. Now, Let us discuss the parts finally. See, the floral parts that are present in the flower, they are actually of 4 types. Okay, and all the 4 floral parts, they would remain arranged in the form of a whole. Okay, so you might be thinking, what is whole? Whole. Whole-like arrangement means a circular arrangement. Suppose this is the arrangement. So this circle-like arrangement is being formed how? Is being formed by similar units. Some similar looking units, they have been arranged circularly, isn't it? And all of them, they share a common center, isn't it? So this type of arrangement is known as whole-like arrangement. Fine. So in the flower, all the 4 floral parts, they would remain arranged in the form of a whole. Understood? So the outermost hole present in the flower is the calyx. Okay, the whole itself is known as calyx, but the whole is made up of many small units. So this small unit of the calyx, the individual single unit of the calyx, is known as sepal. Alright, so you can say that calyx is a whole formed up of sepal. Okay, now regarding the function. So what is the function of calyx or sepal? The function of calyx or the sepals would be to protect the flower in the bud condition. When the flower has not bloomed yet and it is still developing, at that time the flower has to be protected, and it gets protection by this green colored hole that is going to be known as the calyx. Okay, so function of calyx becomes clear to you then. It is going to protect the flower in the bud condition. Alright, now next, internal to the calyx remains the next hole, that is corolla. Fine. Inside or internal to the calyx would remain the corolla. Now corolla is the hole which is made up of the single units, which is the petal. Now what is the function of the corolla? Now do remember, corolla is the most beautiful part of the flower. It is mostly bright colored or aromatic. Yes, of course there are flowers which would not show such characteristics, but usually we know flowers because of their beauty, isn't it? And that beautification of the flower itself comes from the corolla, because the petals are usually very bright in color and they are aromatic. Alright, so what would be the function of the corolla? The function of the corolla is to attract pollinating agents. Now what are pollinating agents, or why are they required to be attracted? See, the main function of the flower itself is reproduction, right? And in reproduction, there are male and female gametes involved. The male and female gametes, they also have to be brought together for fertilization to occur. So most of the time, bringing the male and the female gametes together cannot be done automatically. Sometimes they require the help of certain agents like birds or insects, etc. Fine. So these birds and insects, they simply won't come to the flower to cause, to bring about the gametes together, right? They have to be attracted first. Only then they would be visiting the flower. And that attraction is done by the corolla. It is done by the colorful petals or the aromatic petals. Understood? So the main function of corolla remains what? It remains to be attracting the pollinating agents. Understood? Now, moving to the next part that remains internal to the corolla. The next hole that remains internal to the corolla is the androecium. And it's a hole made up of the single units stamen. Alright. Now, the androecium or the stamen, it's basically the male reproductive unit present in the flower. Why? Because they will be producing the male gamete. Okay, the stamens will be responsible for the production of male gametes. Understood? So if you look at the diagram properly, you see the stamen, it has 2 parts. This stalk-like structure that you can see, it is the filament, and then we have a blob-like structure at the top, and it is bilobed. This structure is the anther. Okay, inside the anther, the male gametes would be produced. Understood? So in that case, the androecium becomes the male reproductive unit of the flower. Next, finally, the last part being gynoecium. It remains exactly at the center. The center of the, or at the tip of the thalamus remains positioned, the gynoecium, and the gynoecium is the female reproductive unit of the flower. Why? The answer is very obvious, because it would be responsible for the production of female gamete. Okay? As you can see in the diagram C, the gynoecium, whose single unit is called carpel or pistil. Okay? The carpel has three parts. This bifid tip, that's called the stigma, then a filamentous stalk-like, that's called the style, and at the base remains a globular or circular structure, that's called the ovary. Inside the ovary, the female gamete or egg will be born, and that's why the carpel or the gynoecium becomes the female reproductive unit of the flower. Understood all the four parts of the flower? They are sepal, petal, stamen and carpel. Or if you want to name the wholes, then it is calyx, corolla, androecium and gynoecium. And what are the functions? Calyx meant for protection of the floral bud, corolla meant for attracting the pollinating agent, androecium produces the male gamete, gynoecium produces the female gamete. Is that clear? Now, for a very, very important part for you to remember, see, calyx and corolla, they have their prescribed roles to play and they are also important, fine. But then they are not directly going to produce the male and the female gamete. As they are not directly responsible for production of male and female gametes, hence we call them non-essential parts of the flower. Understood? On the other hand, androecium and gynoecium, they would be producing the male and the female gametes directly, right? So that's why we call them to be essential parts of the flower. So what are essential parts? That is the gamete producing parts, androecium and gynoecium. And what are non-essential parts? The parts, that is calyx and corolla, which are not directly involved with gamete production. Alright, so that is the discussion regarding flower. Now let us learn a few important terminologies that are associated with flower. They will help you later on to understand families, which we'll be discussing at the end of this chapter. Alright, so let's see. Terminologies with respect to flower. These are very important. If you don't remember this, you would not be able to later on understand families. And families are very scoring part, very important part of this chapter. So let's check them out. First, bisexual flower. Bisexual flower means a flower which has both male and female parts. That means both stamen and carpel. So if a flower possesses both stamen and carpel, we will call it a bisexual flower. Examples are pea and hibiscus. Alright. Next, unisexual flower. Unisexual flower means a flower which will either possess a stamen or carpel, not possess both. Then we will call it a unisexual flower. Alright. Now, unisexual flower, according to how they are born, can give rise to two important conditions like monoecious conditions and dioecious conditions. Alright. Monoecious conditions means if suppose a plant body bears both male flower, okay, that means flower with a stamen, not carpel. That is known as a male flower or staminate flower. Okay, and a female flower which possesses only carpel and no stamen, that's also known as pistillate flower. Okay, so now suppose a plant body bears both male flower and female flower in the same plant body. Okay, flowers are born individually as unisexual flowers, but the male flowers, that is the staminate flowers and pistillate flowers, both are separately born but in the same plant body. That kind of condition is referred as monoecious condition. Examples will be cucurbita, mince. Alright. Next condition being dioecious. Dioecious means the male flower and the female flowers will be born in two different or separate plant bodies. So that means one plant body will be bearing only male flowers. So it's the male plant. And another plant body will be bearing only the female flowers. So that would become the female plant. Understood? So that is known as dioecious condition. Example is papaya, date palm. Next, trimerous flower. Trimerous flowers means flowers where the floral parts, there are 4 floral parts, isn't it? That is calyx, corolla and rhocium, gynoecium. So if in a flower the floral parts remain in the number of 3 or in the multiples of 3, then we will call it a trimerous flower. Means suppose in a flower the sepals are 3, okay, or in the multiple of 3 means 6, 9 likewise. So suppose in a flower the sepals are 3 in number, then petals are also 3, stamen are also 3. Likewise if you find, okay, then that flower becomes trimerous. Likewise tetramerous flower. Flowers with floral parts of 4 or multiples of 4. So if in a flower you find that the floral parts are in the number of 4 or in the multiples 4, 8 likewise. If it is in the multiple of 4 as well, it becomes a tetramerous flower. Next, pentamerous flower. Same, the meaning remains the same. A flower with floral parts of 5 or in the multiples of 5. Then, bracteate flower. Now this is important. See, sometimes, not always, at the base of the flower, like from where the pedicel begins, okay, there a small lateral appendage or leaf-like structure might be present. That structure is known as a bract. So this leaf-like structure sometimes present at the base of the pedicel is called bract. So if a flower possesses bract, then it becomes a bracteate flower. So bracteate flower means flowers with bract. In case it does not have the bract, then we call it ebracteate flower. So flowers without bract are called ebracteate flower. Next, neuter flower. If in case a flower do not have stamen also and carpel also, such a flower is known as neuter flower or sterile flower. It won't be able to perform reproduction. Okay. Next, complete flower. If in a flower you find that all the 4 parts, that is sepal, petal, stamen and carpel, all the 4 parts are present, then we will call it a complete flower. And in case one or more than one parts are missing, we will call it a incomplete flower. Understood? So these terminologies are very important. I hope all of you have been clear regarding the meaning. Next, let us discuss symmetry of flower. Now let us discuss a little bit regarding the symmetry of a flower. Okay, so what is floral symmetry? See, the arrangement of floral parts around the axis of the flower is called the floral symmetry. Okay, and floral symmetry can be of 3 types. It can be of 3 types. Okay, so what are they? First of all, actinomorphic. One of the common symmetry is actinomorphic flower. Actinomorphic flower means when a flower can be divided into 2 equal halves in any radial plane passing through the center. So what it means is that suppose this is a flower, okay, a circular flower, and if I ask you to divide it in a manner so that it gives rise to 2 equal halves. You can now divide it from this plane, that will give you 2 equal halves. This plane also you can divide it, that will also give rise to 2 equal halves. This plane or this plane. From multiple planes you can divide the flower into 2 equal halves, isn't it? So such flowers which can be divided into 2 equal halves from many planes, we call them to be actinomorphic flower. Understood? Examples are very, very important. Examples are mustard, datura, chili. Alright. Next. Next is zygomorphic flower. Zygomorphic flower means when a flower can be divided into 2 equal halves only in one particular vertical plane. What it means? Suppose this is a flower this time. Alright. If this is a flower and if I ask you to divide it into 2 equal halves, from how many planes can you do it? Only one, right? Only from this plane. If you divide the flower, you get 2 equal halves. From any other plane, can you divide it into 2 equal halves? No. right? So such a flower which can be divided into two equal halves from only a single plane, that would be known as zygomorphic flower. Okay, examples are pea, gulmohar, bean, cassia. Alright. Finally, the third is asymmetric or irregular flower. Okay. Asymmetric or irregular flower means a flower when a flower cannot be divided into two equal halves by any plane passing through the center. Means suppose this is a flower. Very irregular in its symmetry. Now this flower, if I ask you to divide it into two equal halves, can you find any plane by which you can do so? No, right? It cannot be divided into two equal halves from any plane of division. That's why we call it a asymmetric flower. Example is gamma. Next, let us discuss the position of floral parts on thalamus. So on the basis of that as well, flowers can be of three types, and let us see what are they. But before we start discussing, there is a very important part that you should know. See, from the very beginning when we have started to discuss flower, I have been telling you that flower is a condensed reproductive shoot, isn't it? So suppose thalamus, it remains condensed with all the nodes confined at one location, right? As because there is no internodal growth happening in the thalamus. Now just imagine if thalamus starts to grow. If I elongate the thalamus, don't you think it will look like this? This being the stem which has elongated, and because it has elongated, the nodes have also separated. So these are the nodes, and in between the gaps are the internode, right? So now from the lowermost node will arise the sepal, then above it will remain the petal, and on top of that would remain the stamen, isn't it? And finally at the tip, at the topmost position, at the apex would remain position the ovary. That's how the ovary remains at the center, right? If you compress it, you get the thalamus, and that's how all of them remain arranged in the form of a whole. Otherwise, if we elongate it, it is going to look like this. Alright. And another thing, because I have been telling ovary, and I will be also taking this term throughout our discussion, you must know the structure of gynoecium or the carpel. The carpel is actually a structure that would look like this. It consists of three parts. The globular base is called the ovary. Then the filamentous structure in between is called the style. And this tipmost region, that's called the stigma. Stigma, style and ovary. This is the structure of the carpel, and I'm going to use the term ovary all throughout our discussion. You must remember this two first. Alright, so let us start our discussion. See, we are starting with the first type of flower, that is hypogynous. Hypogynous condition is also called ovary superior condition. Okay, why? See, this is the thalamus. In the diagram, if you can see properly, this is the thalamus, and at the center remains the carpel. The ovary is exactly at the center, isn't it? And from below the ovary arises the rest of the floral parts. The stamen, the petal, the sepals, all of them, they would remain below the ovary, isn't it? And ovary is, that's why, or the carpel is, that's why, acquiring the topmost position. Right? Being at the center itself means it is at the apex. So it is at the topmost position. So if in a flower the ovary occupies the topmost position and rest of the floral parts arises from below it, then we will call it ovary superior condition, or the flower is known as hypogynous flower. Understood? Examples are very important. Mustard, China rose, brinjal, petunia. Alright. Next. Epigynous flower. Epigynous flower means exactly opposite of hypogynous. That is ovary inferior condition. So what would be happening here? You see, this is the ovary. This is the ovary. Okay, and inside the ovary, this red colored marked circles, these are the ovules. Alright, so now see this is something that is surrounding the ovary, right? So this part that is surrounding the ovary, like a cover, that is actually the thalamus. So here what has happened is that the thalamus has fused with the ovary and it is completely covering the ovary. So ovary is remaining at the base and rest of the floral parts like sepal, petal, stamen, everything is arising from above the ovary. Okay, that's why as ovary is going to be below and rest of the floral parts are going to all arise above the ovary, we call it the ovary inferior condition or epigynous flower. Understood? Examples are guava, cucumber, bitter gourd, red florets of sunflower. Alright. Now finally the perigynous flower. Perigynous flower means ovary half inferior. Okay, see in hypogynous condition what was happening? Ovary was at top and rest of the floral parts were below. So ovary superior. In case of epigynous, you have seen the ovary is below and rest every part is above it, isn't it? So we call it ovary inferior, isn't it? But here the ovary and rest of the floral parts all will remain at the same level. Then we will call it ovary half inferior or perigynous flower. Understood? Now this can be happening in three different manners. In a flower which is perigynous, three types of conditions may arise. In the first condition, you can see that the thalamus here is flat. It is flattened and ovary is at the center and rest of the floral parts are also at the same level. So in this diagram, it is easy to understand that all the floral parts, they are at the same position. All of them neither are below or above themselves, they are all at the same level. That's why it's called half inferior or perigynous condition. Fine. But in the second diagram, you can find that the thalamus this time has become a little bit curved. So it has become cup shaped, isn't it? So cup shaped, again the ovary is at the center. So that means origin wise, the ovary is still at the apex, right? It is still at the tip. And the rest of the floral parts, even if they seem to be slightly above the ovary, position wise, they are above, right? So what I am trying to say is that in second condition, position wise maybe the other floral parts are slightly above the ovary, but origin wise the ovary is still at the top, right? So this is going to be considered that all of them are in the same level. So that's why again this will be considered a perigynous condition. Understood? Last, number 3. Here the thalamus is flask shaped and ovary is at the center, so that means origin wise it is still at the apex, that means at the top, and the rest of the floral parts are position wise above the ovary. So ovary origin wise at the top, rest of the floral parts position wise above. So likewise we will be considering again all of them to be the same level and we will call it again a perigynous condition. So do remember this. Examples would be plum, peach and rose. So that much regarding our discussion in today's class. In the next class, we'll start to elaborate each part of the flower in details. Means we'll be discussing calyx in details, corolla in details, androecium and gynoecium in details. So next class, we'll start with